wall of displacement. How social analysis sheds light on the edges of society. Saskia Sassen, Columbia University, New York.
On the 9th of November 1989, I was in New York. I'd been following the walks with candles in Leipzig, where the wall had come down before it fell in Berlin.
Something was meant to happen when I clicked. We made that. That's an accomplishment. 20 years, we destroyed it. Something that took probably millions and millions of years to make. We also made that. These are capabilities. The key code is a negative one. And one of my questions is, if we could make that, can we make a different valence that is equally consequential? We grab, this is the latest, land. We're buying 220 million hectares of land just in 5 years. We transform smallholder agriculture. They have knowledge. They know how to protect the earth, the land that we make them into plantations. Evict floras, faunas, cultures, knowledges, rural economies. Where do those people go? They go to the slums. They become slum dwellers. All that knowledge that they have is disappeared. They're just slum dwellers. In the meantime, the plantations have a capacity for quickly destroying that earth. And now, we're buying cities. I'm working with a data set of 100 cities that are the key destinations for large corporate investments. Minimum investment, $5 million. These are just 10. If I had to show you the 100, it would take much more space. New York, London, Tokyo, if you go down the list, all kinds of cities with different rates of growth. This is just foreign investment. London is number 1. Now, many people think this is a very common language to use, gentrification. No, this is not gentrification. This is something much more deeper. This is the beginning of a new history. Let me give you a little sort of element here. The Qatari royals, nothing against them, great airline, they own more of central London than the Queen of England. I don't worry about either of them. They're fine. But it's not gentrification. The use of certain categories are invitations not to think. Why bother? Oh, it's gentrification. Why does it matter? If you think about the question, where's the frontier today? Centuries ago, it was the edge of empire. I define the frontier as a space where there is an encounter between actors from different worlds for whom there are no established rules of engagement. In the imperial epoch, we sort of killed them. That was our mode of having that encounter. Today, there is one type of place which still has a frontier, and that's our big cities. And the frontier, in this case, becomes a place where those without power get to make a history. They get to make an economy. They get to make a culture. It is also the place today where power, which has become so intermediated, chains of derivatives and I don't know what, it's not just people, it's not just rich elites. Power is basically invisible, inaccessible, but there's one moment when it hits the ground and it becomes men and women who have it all and get it all. Huge shadow effect on cities. And the powerless can actually have that encounter. And not to ask for something, but to say, and here I use a Latin American phrase that I always found beautiful, estamos presentes. We're present power. We're not asking. We're present. The city, our big cities, is the only place. Provincial cities, I don't know. So when I look at these types of investments, last year the top 100 cities received $600 billion. These, again, minimum investment, 5 million. We're not talking cute little apartment in the village of New York. This year, I just got the data, 1.3 trillion. It's escalating. The question then is, who owns the city? If the city is a place where we can make, we can invent, we can have encounters, problematic. Are we dealing with the new systemics? I think we are. Let me just show you some graphs. I love these graphs. I think they're beautiful. My son is an artist. He doesn't quite agree with me. But this is one line that tells a tale. Now, using the US, a bit of an extreme case, but makes it all clear. Corporate profits, disregard this. Here comes the growth. Look at this very sharp growth. Then comes the crises, which for this sector lasts about 2 hours, I would say. I exaggerate, it's a few years. Here's the critical trend. After the crises, higher. In the meantime, we know that vast sectors of populations are still suffering under the crisis. This is even better. This is corporate assets. Here, the crises. I mean, look also at this sharp, this is really the new era that begins in the 1980s. Extraordinary rise. And here the crisis lasts about half an hour. And after that, higher. One question I like to ask myself is, what is the steam engine of our epoch? Not that which can change everything, but that which can make a new ordering. The typical answer I get is, of course, digital technology. Maybe 30 years ago. Today, I would argue it's infrastructural, necessary but indeterminate. How you use it, is the question. I think it's finance. Capacity to financialize. Finance is not traditional banking. Traditional banking sells something it has, money, and we pay an interest for it. We all need it. Finance is different. Finance sells something it does not have. And in that selling what it does not have lies its danger and its brilliance. It has to develop instruments that allow it to invade sector after sector. Even more extraordinary, it can extract value from extraordinarily modest assets. So I want to give you some examples, but first a bit on finance. Look at this. This is just one bit of finance. Look at that growth curve. 2001, less than $1 trillion. 2007, 62 trillion. At that moment, and this is like jumping orders of magnitude. At that moment, the global GDP of all countries in the world was 54 trillion. The total value of finance, as measured by outstanding derivatives, which is the basic measure, was 600 trillion. Now, when I deal with those figures, I interrogate myself, what does that really mean? We name it in money, but what is it? So for instance, I ask, well, what's the currency issued by all the central banks in the world? 250 trillion. That tells you that a lot of that stuff is not is not money. Now here's a way in which finance shows you that it is a capability. It can extract something and make it work. Think of finance as an economy of extraction. So here's a story. I cannot develop it at length, but some of you know this is not about helping people get homes. This is about extracting an asset at a time when the high investment circuit is saying, oh, please, enough of derivatives based on interest rates, based in turn on other derivatives. Give me an asset-backed security. Well, not much was left in the United States. Everything has been financialized, except very, very modest households. The challenge, develop an instrument, which in fact I've seen the instrument, 16 extraordinarily complex steps to do what? To get a contract that represents an asset where you have to hide the low value of the asset. Brilliant, I mean, absolutely brilliant. The result, every year, this is data from our central bank, every year, 1.2 million, 2.2 million people who eventually all lost their home. When the head of our central bank, Bernanke, stepped down last year, he said, we have two huge issues. One is this, 14 million plus households will have lost their home by the end of 2014. The other one I'll get to in a bit. So here is more. Europe thinks it doesn't have that problem. These are all invisible histories, by the way. In their full materiality, they're invisible. I'm very intrigued by how the material can become invisible. Germany is among the highest. Invisible, those are households. The numbers are much smaller in the United States. But Hungary has had now 1 million households. 1 million households can be, 4 million people. It's not good. So one question when you go through all of this, who are we, the citizens? I mean, what is happening here? Let me add another element, since I raised this question. This is a map that has 10,000 huge buildings, full-time gathering. It's in the public domain, by the way. It's not, never would present stuff that is not in the public domain, certainly not about this subject. The logic for our security, we the citizens, first have to be suspect for our security. Huge construction project, huge technical deployment, 1 million people who are brilliant, top clearance. Mr. Snowden comes out of that. But he was in Hawaii, doesn't show here. To do what? To gather data, most of which cannot be analyzed. In fact, the way it works, good old-fashioned prejudice. You find a person right there on the street or whatever. Let me check her out. Then you move into that data set, and then you see who all that person is connected. If that person is in a Manhattan cafe, what it will show is that just about half of Lower Manhattan is connected, the density of bars, etc. Very problematic. What I have described to you are geographies we must imagine. We do not see them. In this new work of mine, in this book, I ask myself the question, what is the kind of systemic edge that can generate the invisibility of the material? A lot of my effort has been spent on dead land and dead water. Climate change is far too beautiful language. Climate change, oh yeah. No, dead land and dead water. Here's one way. This is something that I'm doing with an artist who happens to be my son. That might be some connection, but anyhow. When we think about finance, when we think about the capacity to destroy huge water bodies, we're actually dealing with a sort of key code that is rather, it's not necessarily fantastic. No, it's often very mediocre. But what it has is an extraordinary capacity to aggregate. Finance is probably the best example. My question is, can we generate key codes that are not these absolutely extraordinary machines? I'm trying to move away. Hello. I'm trying to move away from the extraordinary and stay with the ordinary that have also a capacity to aggregate, but that aggregate on a positive vector. Thank you.